Nick Akerman, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Great to see you, my friend. Lots to talk about. Hour goes by way too fast. Let me jump right into it.
Sure.
So, Nick, look, Trump's recently disclosed crypto investment vehicle, that organization, that LLC that's registered in the Cayman Islands, reportedly backed by Saudi sovereign wealth, it's exploded in value. My understanding on this, he's making about $1 billion a month. $1 billion, right? Given your background, what red flags does this raise in terms of international money laundering, FCPA violations, or even potential racketeering activity?
All of those flags, but it really comes down to one thing. It's simply graft. I mean, Trump is just profiting off the presidency, and he's using it as a backdoor to have foreigners be able to provide him money that they could never provide him just by giving him a bag of cash. Instead, they're buying what are really just bullshit coins that mean nothing other than to give them influence and a basis to get into Trump and put their claws into him and get favors from. It's pure and outright bribery. There's no other way to describe it. When you're selling something that is totally worthless and getting millions of dollars in return, there's only one conclusion here. It's a big bribe. I mean, it's set up for pure bribery. Couldn't be more corrupt.
I mean, it's not even millions. I'm talking about billions. In fact, just the profit in terms of the percentage for the buy and then the sale of the crypto exchange, these coins, has already netted over $150 million. But the value that he has based upon the number of coins that they have is like, I don't know, $1 billion a month in terms of increase in value. I'm blown away that this isn't even a bigger issue, that more people aren't talking about it, because yeah, this is a massive, massive international money laundering issue. That's just how I see it.
No, you're absolutely right. That's what it is. I mean, there's nothing more to it than Trump lining his own pockets, taking advantage of the presidency so he can get as much money personally before he leaves office. That's what it's all about. I mean, this whole cryptocurrency thing is a big scam to begin with, but this is the biggest scam because these coins aren't worth shit. I mean, they aren't worth anything.
But it's funny that you say that, because it says it on the website that this is not to like a normal cryptocurrency transaction, that this is basically supporting and you showing through the purchasing of these coins your affection and love for President Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, totally crazy, totally corrupt. I mean, this is just money going into his pocket for no other reason than these people want to have influence. And believe me, they're not putting millions or billions of dollars into this unless they expect something in return. That's all it is. It's just a facade to be able to say that they bought something, which is completely worthless, in order to extract whatever it is they want to get from Trump, which means it's government services, something related to the government. This is such classic bribery to the thousandth degree. I mean, it just is completely off the charts. And the thing is, you probably can't be prosecuted for any of this. I mean, again, we could talk about this, but the Supreme Court has basically given him a free pass, and there's no way anyone's going to prosecute.
Yeah, and he's taking advantage of it. Meanwhile, talk about taking advantage. We know that the Trump organization recently secured a $2 billion golf course and hotel development deal in Abu Dhabi with a whole slew of unknown, undisclosed foreign equity partners.
Right.
Question I want to ask you, could these ventures negotiated while, of course, Trump is president, could it constitute an ongoing violation of the Foreign Emoluments Clause or even rise to the level of self-dealing criminality?
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, clearly, I mean, I guess if you had to go back to the Supreme Court opinion, these would not be official acts. He's setting up all of these situations outside of his official duties. I mean, even in Vietnam, he's got the same thing. He's upped the tariffs on Vietnam, and they're all sucking up to him so they can bring those tariffs down. And what are they doing? They're letting him build a Trump Tower in Hanoi. Again, you know, what Trump is doing is he's using his two sons as foils in between to keep himself out of the thing. But certainly, if you put the whole thing together and you investigated what was going on and what the true motives were here, this just reeks of criminal intent, reeks of selling government favors. And it makes you wonder, why did he put such a large tariff on Vietnam in the first place? Just so he could lower it in order to use it as leverage to be able to build a Trump Tower in Hanoi.
Wow. Meanwhile, there's evidence as well that members of Trump's inner circle, including Jared Kushner, his son Eric Trump, that they're leveraging all of these diplomatic meetings for real estate scouting trips. I mean, when Trump just went to the Middle East, and right, what were we really looking at? It was nothing more than a real estate scouting trip. And look, I know Trump better than anybody. I know what he's doing. My question is this just unethical grift, or could it be prosecuted under public corruption statutes?
Yeah, it could be prosecuted, but you know what the hard part here is that you have to get testimony from the people overseas, the people that are involved in this, the ones providing the money. They're not going to, you know, allow themselves to be put into a grand jury in the United States. You'd have to wait for them to suddenly show up in the United States and serve them with a grand jury subpoena. This would be hard cases to put together. I think that once you knew all the facts, if everybody came in and testified truthfully, yeah, you'd have a case here, no question about it. I mean, you have probably a pretty serious racketeering case by the time you're finished. But the problem is getting the evidence under these circumstances where it is so spread out and it involves foreign countries.
So let me ask you this then. Let's go back to that Supreme Court decision, the one that basically gives him presidential immunity on any act so long as he, meaning Trump himself, declares it an issue of national security. I'm just trying to figure out how
any official act. I mean, it's not just national security. It's anything. I mean, it's like the Jeffrey Clark rule. This is the guy who he tried to install as attorney general in his last term in order that he could pull off the scam with the border, the states, the major states that were going to try to change their votes from Biden to Trump. I mean, that was a complete scam, but yet Justice Roberts said, well, because he was talking to people in the Department of Justice and because these people like Jeffrey Clark are part of his official duties, you can't get behind it. You can't prove the motive, and therefore you can't prove the criminal intent.
Yeah, I mean, then how will there ever be accountability? Or do you believe, as I do, there will never be accountability for any of these emolument violations, these public corruption statute violations, for these international money laundering violations? It's basically, Trump, you understand that you cannot be prosecuted for anything that you do as it relates to any of these. Therefore,
I mean, look at the bad things, Michael. Look at just the bad things he's doing now. He's going after law firms. What does he do? He tries to make it look like an official act by using an executive order. He tries to make it an official act by having the EEOC start in bogus investigations into these law firms. I mean, he has been slammed now, just the third law firm. Basically, the executive order was thrown out, but there's no criminal accountability because he's hiding behind the official acts of what he's done. He's clothing everything he does, all of this bad stuff, whether it's going after the law firms, whether it's going after Harvard University. He's making it all look like official acts in some way with respect to Harvard and all these colleges. Again, it's these investigations that he's ordered by other agencies to make it look like this is what he can do. Again, it's the Jeffrey Clark exception to criminality, essentially. And that's what he's done. And someone's advising him to very specifically put all of this in terms of what one would consider an official act that falls right within that immunity decision. And they essentially have given him a free ride for 4 years to commit all the crimes he wants.
And you know that he will.
He will, and he's been doing it. I mean, he did it also. Look at this guy, Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor, two people in his former administration that he is basically he has directed his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to open up investigations, criminal investigations on both of them. I mean, that falls squarely within the Jeffrey Clark exception under that immunity statute. Yeah. And it's totally bogus. I mean, what did, Krebs do? He basically said that the election was fair, that one of the fairest elections we've ever had in 2020. And the other guy, Taylor, all he did was basically write the anonymous opinion piece in the New York Times. And these guys are now being targeted by grand juries, which is completely outrageous. And in the day when I had been in the Watergate prosecution, we were investigating this kind of stuff that was done with Nixon's enemies list. Unfortunately, we didn't really have enough evidence on motive and intent. Here, the motive and intent is absolutely overwhelming. But according to Justice Roberts, you can't use motive. You can't get into it at all, period.
But here's the thing. While this is certainly a protection for President Trump, it's not a protection for Don Jr. It's not a protection for Eric Trump. It's not a protection for Jared Kushner or any of these others that are doing something. There was like $1 trillion made during that one day where the stock market, went up like 1,500 points in 90 seconds and then dropped down as fast in 90 seconds. But somehow these big players, many of whom, were the former CEOs of trading platforms, they all made hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, billions and billions of dollars.
Right. So what you're talking about is insider trading. And the real question comes down, what did they know? Can you prove that they knew that there was going to be this huge drop in the market after he announced all these crazy tariffs? Or when he instituted them again with China, made a deal with China. I mean, did these people know about these things? And again, you're dealing with a bunch of liars. None of them are going to testify truthfully. Maybe if you had a subpoena on their emails accounts, you might be able to get some evidence of knowledge. But these are not going to be easy cases to make. I mean, you're certainly going to have exactly what you said, that they suddenly sold stock or they bought stock all at the opportune times. Then you've got to tie it up, with some other evidence to show that they actually had insider information. Yeah, and that's going to be the hard part.
I think, though, there's actually a bigger issue here than even trying to find. I don't believe that Pam Bondi or any of the other members of the Department of Justice will actually even open an investigation into it. So it technically, again, it's a carte blanche by this administration to the insiders and enablers to just knock yourself out. You make as much money as you can. Remember something, though. In order for them to make, that means somebody else has to lose. And who is it that's losing? 90% of the time, it's the general public.
No question about it. No question about it. And then the question is whether you can make these people accountable. And that is not going to be so easy to do. But it's just like you said with this investigation. I mean, it could very well be that what Trump is trying to do is the same thing he did when he wound up in this first impeachment proceeding, just trying to get somebody to announce an investigation just to put them in the worst possible light that he can, which he tried to do with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden by getting Zelensky to say, oh, there's an investigation without there really being an investigation. I mean, look, that's kind of out of his normal playbook. He's trying to do the same thing across the boards. And, you just have to expect he's going to continue with the same kind of activity.
Yeah. Well, look, then now you have on top of that the so-called big beautiful bill, which passed the House, and I'm disgusted by so many. The fact that we could not find four Republicans with a spine. It grants Trump near unilateral control over all federal spending that's tied to national security and infrastructure, which of course includes surveillance capabilities and other things. From a constitutional perspective, how close are we to codifying autocracy into law?
Pretty close. I mean, that bill also even does worse than that. It also gives immunity to all of Trump's people that have been stonewalling the courts on all of these temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions. If you read that thing, they snuck this into the bill and made it not only prospective, applying forward, but it also applies backwards, which basically immunizes all of these people who essentially sent the airplanes off to El Salvador with all of the Venezuelan immigrants to that hellhole in Salvador. And yet what this does, this bill will basically say you can't hold any of these people in contempt because they didn't put up a bond or a security when the TRO or the preliminary injunction was first issued. I mean, this is absolutely outrageous, and I'm just shocked that nobody's really jumped up and down about that. It is totally a joke, because normally whenever you sue the government, you're not required to put down a bond. The whole purpose of a bond is to protect somebody who's been enjoined, and maybe later down the road, let's say it's a trade secret case, you find out that the information stolen wasn't really a trade secret case, and the bond reimburses them for any kind of damage that they incurred. But now they've tied that in to all temporary restraining orders, made it mandatory in order to have the courts be able to enforce contempt proceedings against people who violate those court orders. So there's a lot of little sneaky things in that one big, beautiful bill that are absolutely outrageous and are just designed to make Trump a dictator and to give him full power over everything.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this bill, it also authorizes a new, and I want to get it correct, Office of National Renewal, which has like this sweeping power to bypass agency review. I mean, I couldn't believe it as I was going through. I was like, you've got to be shitting me. Isn't that just a rebranded version of a political enforcement agency? I mean, could a future DOJ dismantle it, or would the courts need to intervene and fast?
Yeah, I look, it's basically taking DOJ and making it a permanent federal agency. I mean, it's the same thing. It gives them the same kind of power. And somebody in Congress has got to wake up to this. I mean, the problem is, what is the Senate going to do? And is anybody there going to look at all these fine details? I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It's a 1,000-page bill chock full of all kinds of bullshit and stuff that Trump has put in there simply to make him a more powerful autocrat. That's what they're trying to do.
No, I think it's more like that's what they actually are accomplishing. And since we're talking about autocrats, this on and off love affair, bromance between Trump and Vladimir Putin, somebody even needs to explain this to me, which I never thought I would see, what's going on back and forth. One day he's talking about Putin is just showing strength after a massive missile attack on Ukraine. Now all of a sudden he's saying, Putin's gone crazy after the latest missile strike on Kiev, where, dozens of people were killed. This is both, in my opinion, morally revolting, but it's also geopolitically reckless.
Totally reckless. Putin is playing this guy like a fiddle. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that Trump wants to just walk away from this unless Trump can get a quick victory, a quick settlement. He doesn't want anything to do with this. And that's what Putin is banking on, that Trump is just going to walk away from that and let them fight it out, as Trump would say. And that's really the question. And that was in the Wall Street Journal editorial this morning, whether or not Trump was actually going to do something to force Putin's hand or just walk away. And if he just walks away, that's exactly what Putin wants. The people in the Kremlin know exactly what they're doing. They know what this guy's personality is like. They know how he does things. And everything they've said, everything they've done plays directly into a strategy to get this guy to just walk away and leave Ukraine by itself, which is an absolute outrage. If people thought what Joe Biden did with Afghanistan was bad, this would be absolutely the worst thing that could possibly happen. It's right in Europe. It's going to affect Poland. It's going to affect NATO. And it's also going to affect China, who's going to say, hey, if he's not going to do anything in Europe, then why should we be worried about walking into Taiwan? I mean, this has absolutely huge ramifications for our foreign policy going forward. And this guy is just absolutely the worst person to be dealing with this by far.
Look, so in the past, it's not just that he was praising Putin. He's also suggested, and again, I'm speaking in the past because on a Tuesday, he could be praising Putin. On a Wednesday, meaning Trump could be attacking Putin, calling him crazy. On a Friday, the bromance could be back. But he has suggested in the past that Ukraine brought this war on themselves. I don't understand it, but again, that Ukraine brought this on themselves.
They said that Ukraine started the war.
Right.
I mean, that's the most absurd thing. That's like in a totally different reality universe. But not even close.
This episode of Mea Culpa is brought to you by Graza, my new favorite olive oil. It's fresh, it's never blended, and it comes from a single type of olive, the Picual, straight out of Jaén, Spain, where over half of the world's olive oil is produced. So why Graza? Single origin goodness, that's why. Only one olive from one region. No mysterious blends. That means a traceable, a fresher product without mixing in any low grade or unknown oils. It's super fun. It has squeeze and spray bottles too. So there's no more messy tins or drippy spouts. Just aim, squeeze, and go. I mean, there are 3 types for any task that you have. One, they have something called frizzle. That's their newest, with a higher 490-degree Fahrenheit smoke point, which is perfect for frying, crisping, or grilling. Sizzle at 410 degrees Fahrenheit, which is an everyday cooking oil for roasting, marinating, and sauteing. Then they have something called drizzle, which is a bold, a punchy finishing oil that you sprinkle on your salads, you dip your bread in, or even you top it off on your ice cream. Look, let me be clear. My daughter is the actual chef in the house, and she uses olive oil on everything from pastas to preparing steak. I mean, not only does this cook well, it smells delicious. Plus, as a healthy eater, Graza's extra virgin oils, they are loaded with those heart and brain friendly polyphenols. So it's good for you. Look, so here's what you get. You get 10% off your first order on Graza's site. But I personally suggest grabbing the trio. That's all the 3 squeezy bottles, the sizzle, the frizzle, and the drizzle, so that you're set for every style of cooking. So head right now to graza.co and use code Cohen to get 10% off of Trio, which includes, again, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, and get to cooking your next chef-quality meal. Again, head to Graza, graza.co, and use code Cohen, Cohen, to get 10% off the Trio. And I love saying it, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle. So get cooking now. The question I really want to bring to you is, obviously you and I and my listeners, we all know that we don't have a legitimate functioning DOJ. But assuming for this podcast that we did, do you think this would merit a look at Trump's communications with foreign adversaries under the Logan Act or the Espionage Act?
It probably would. But it, again, would be very hard to prove. I mean, Trump has been very careful on this one. If you recall, when he met in this last term, he met with Putin twice without other people present. I think maybe his wife was present for one of them. He even had the interpreter that was present rip up her notes and basically told her she couldn't talk to anybody about what they said. So that's going to be a pretty hard case to make. You know, whether Trump is just a useful idiot or actually involved in espionage, I don't think we're ever going to know that until ultimately we get the same thing that happened in the Kremlin a number of years ago, where there was essentially a coup and the new government came in, and we found out that Al-Jarhis, was really a Russian spy. Right. I don't think we're going to find out any of that unless we can get into the Russian files.
Could you imagine that we're even engaging in this type of a fucking conversation? I mean, we're talking about the president of the United States and a guy who I cared for deeply, I protected, I worked for a decade and a half. I'm actually in my mind, as I was preparing questions to ask you, I'm saying to myself, if we had a legit DOJ, one that really cared about America, our Constitution, our rule of law, would they not be subpoenaing Trump's communications, whether it's on his cell phone or whether or not it's emails that other people in the we'll call it the Trump sphere, are talking and saying about what's going on with Ukraine and so on? Because I guarantee you, the way that these idiots, and there's no other way to put it, right? The way they use shit on Signal or on emails, understanding that once you put an email out there, even if they claim that, it's not there anymore, it's disappeared, it's been wiped out, that's bullshit. You can always find it. If you had the DOJ, if you had a Pam Bondi, making the demand for it, trust me, it would show up. But we're talking about the president of the United States potentially involved in Logan Act or Espionage Act type of activities. I can't believe what's going on in this country anymore.
Yeah, look, it kind of happened with Nixon a little bit. We didn't really know what the story was when he was running for president in '68. He had somebody act as an intermediary with the South Vietnamese government to keep them from settling that war, because he was concerned that if it was settled, that Hubert Humphrey would have won the election. Mm-hmm. And Johnson knew about it. Others knew about it. And it never really came out until a few years ago when H.R. Haldeman, who is Nixon's chief aide, his notes came out, and it showed that he was actually interfering. It was a violation of the Logan Act, no question about it. Certainly in the Watergate, we never knew about it. I never found out about this until it came out in the New York Times. So it's not like it's been unprecedented. But with this guy, whatever Nixon did, this guy did 100 times more. It's just not even close. This is Watergate on steroids in the first administration, and now it's gone way beyond that. Absolutely. You're 100% right. The real problem here where we're falling down is that there are no checks and balances. The only check we've got on this guy are the courts. And he's trying to undermine that now as much as he can through this one big, beautiful bill, through going after judges and trying to put them into some kind of disrepute. And you don't have the normal checks and balances here. That's what we're missing. He's even trying to get rid of the independent agencies that normally check and balance the president. So that's where we're really finding ourselves slipping, is that we're getting out of what would normally be an atmosphere out there with checks and balances on the president. It even includes the press, for God's sakes. I mean, when you got the Washington Post that's owned by a guy that's got a whole conglomerate that's dependent on the U.S. government, he's pulling his punches. He's sucking up to Trump. You got the L.A. Times doing the same thing.
Sure.
So you even and then you've got the press like CBS News. Trump sues them on this bullshit claim about Kamala Harris's interview on 60 Minutes, that they somehow did something with the transcript of that to make her look better. It's a total bullshit case, but yet you've got Paramount trying to settle this case for real money when it's a completely frivolous bullshit case that ought to be thrown out because they want to get approval from the federal government to be able to sell their company to somebody else. They're trying to get approval for a merger. So all of this is just corruption up the wazoo is all I can say. Never anything like this before. And what it's done is it's eroded our checks and balances, which has really been the key to our Constitution and the key to the way our government works.
You know, you made a statement that what's going on right now is so much worse than Watergate. It's not the first time that I'm hearing the comparison to Watergate, and I'm thankful to have you on Mea Culpa as somebody who was so close to that. You know, I want to bring up for a quick second the end of, I shouldn't even say the end. They say maybe the last year to year and a half of the Biden administration, where Trump is making all of these allegations that everything was done via auto pen, that Biden didn't even know what was going on, that Biden didn't even know who the hell he was. Jake Tapper comes out with a book, and I've never seen, never ever, and I've written 2 New York Times bestsellers, #1 and #8. I have never seen more shameless promotion by an individual than fucking Jake Tapper, right? And CNN promoting the shit out of it, even allowing Tapper to go on MSNBC and other stations, where he claims in his book that Biden's auto pen scandal, which Trump brought up, is so much worse than Watergate. I was curious, from a guy that was there in that room.
That's ridiculous. All presidents have used the auto pen. I mean, they just do unless they're signing something in public. That is the biggest bullshit I've ever seen. When you come right down to it with this whole thing about Biden, there's 2 pieces of this. One, yeah, he was kind of losing it in terms of being able to be an effective campaigner. He wasn't losing it in terms of being president. He was able to carry out his duties. He was able to perform his duties the way one would expect him to perform. But as we saw in that debate where he kind of lost it, he was not a forceful campaigner. He was losing his voice. He was losing his ability to stand up and really be as aggressive as you would want somebody to be in a presidential campaign. So you kind of have to divide it between those 2 things. I don't think anybody can say he was doing a bad job as president or didn't know what he was doing.
Well, that's not what Trump is saying, Nick. That's not what Trump is saying. What he's saying is that Biden didn't do anything, and that everything that was done was not done even with the president's authorization or knowledge, claiming again that Joe Biden was basically mentally unfit to remain in office. He should have stepped down or been removed, and that Kamala Harris should have taken over, and that every single executive act that was done, every bill that was passed, every document that was signed was done without Joe Biden's knowledge and all done via the auto pen. That's the bullshit claim. And Tapper actually affirms that.
Yeah, he affirms it, but there were lots of other people who had lots of conversations with Joe Biden, all straight through about governing, about bills that were pending before Congress. I just don't think that's right. I think you really have to divide it between 2 aspects of what a president does. 1, campaigning, and 2, governing. Governing, he was perfectly fine. He did a good job. You had people coming back with conversations with him right up almost until the time he decided to step down, who were saying that he knew what he was doing and he was in charge of things. The problem was he could not campaign. If this had been back in the 1830s or 1840s, when a president just sat in his porch and let other people do the campaigning and not be on television, which of course there was no television then, and it wasn't as much hands-on as it is now, it would have been a whole different story. He probably would have been reelected. But we're in a totally different world. This was not like Woodrow Wilson, who was absolutely sick, couldn't do a thing, and his wife was basically the president for his last days in office. Not that situation. I mean, he was out there, he was doing things. It's a question of how you put the spin on the facts that he was getting. And you can always, with somebody older, you can find instances where they have a little lapse of memory. They're not as sharp as they used to be. But that, to me, really goes to being a good campaigner. I mean, look at the contrast between the way Kamala Harris was campaigning and the way Joe Biden was. He just wasn't, even if he had been on the top of his game, in a sense, during that debate, he wasn't going for the jugular against Trump like Kamala Harris did when she was debating against him. Right. That's where he fell down, and that's where his problem was, and that's how it ought to be viewed.
Because what the book really makes a claim is that this inner circle of Biden, and I have my own personal animus, to them, where I would like to see, believe it or not, the DOJ actually investigate their actions, or I should say their inactions. As I filed myself, and I know several other people who did as well, high-profile individuals who filed applications for pardons. Well, I'm curious how having 7 letters of recommendation from 7 key individuals in history, yourself being one of them, not even a response. Yet this inner circle thought it smart or the right thing to do to pardon Biden's entire family, who didn't even have an application in. And so, I believe that they were doing that. I truly do. I believe that they were keeping information from Biden because those last, let's just say, 6 months or 3 or 4 months, he did not appear to be good. He had moments of clarity, but I believe that they actually were running a shadow government using the auto pen. I truly do, because I can't imagine again how having my application with all the facts, testifying before 7 congressional, I never avoided a congressional subpoena. I appeared, I testified. I did that in a civil suit, in a grand jury suit. I testified before 2 grand juries, a criminal and a civil. I never did anything. And no restitution owed, no anything, first-time offender. You're really going to tell me that after everything that I didn't even deserve a response? Not even a response.
Well, let me just push back on that a little bit. First of all, I'm not so sure that any president or even the pardon office gives a response as to what their ultimate resolution was or what they're doing. One of the things I was always concerned about your situation was that kind of the political toxicity of the whole thing could have been viewed that way by the president, by others. That is the reason why they didn't give you the pardon, even though you deserve the pardon. And I always thought there was going to be an issue there, just politically, and even to give a response, they'd be afraid to give a response that was written that somehow could be used. As to his family, clearly on Hunter Biden, I think Joe Biden, although he didn't express it this way, I think the real concern was that he was convicted on the tax situation. He could have very well wound up with prison time. And if he did, he would have been serving prison time in Trump's Bureau of Prison while Trump was president. Trump could have done the same thing that he did to you, putting him in solitary confinement. He could have made his life absolutely miserable, unlike any normal inmate that might be serving
like what they did to me. Right.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so to me, the real reason why that pardon was justified was because why would anybody ever want to put their son in a position where Trump...
But I'm a son of America, right? And he's supposed to be my president,
Right.
But you see,
but he was looking at you because of the book you were writing, right?
Well, right.
He was looking.
Look,
right? That's
sure, but let me say it this way, right? I truly don't believe that the inner circle actually discussed it with Biden. I don't. And I'd like to just find out if I'm right or I'm wrong. And I say this because Biden is not feckless. He never was. He was never one to walk away from let's just say, an adversity that was never really known as something that he would do, even though I take your point that it would be looked at as some political act, by Biden to stick it to Trump or whatever. Let's just talk for a quick second about Trump himself. The guy literally just pardoned Todd and Julie Chrisley. These two individuals were convicted. They're television, reality stars, convicted of tax fraud. And right now they were serving their time. Trump went ahead in this pardon, bypassed the DOJ review entirely, and then granted them full pardons. Isn't this exactly the kind of personal, transactional use of pardon power that you, Nick Akerman, warned about during the Mueller investigation?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even the Mueller investigation was even more outrageous because what Trump was doing was basically telling Manafort, who had been convicted of a whole series of crimes and was sentenced to prison, basically saying, you better not cooperate. And if you don't cooperate, you'll be getting a pardon. That's essentially what he told him. I mean, that is the most outrageous use of the pardon power to essentially obstruct justice. Now, with respect to all of these other pardons he's doing, including another guy who was just convicted of tax fraud and was about to serve prison, that's another one that was pardoned. I mean, these are all transactional. These were people that contributed to his campaign or somehow, made it try to appeal to Trump because they were victims of the system in some way, even though they admitted to cheating on their taxes. And not to mention all of those people from the January 6th convictions. I mean, some of them convicted of extremely serious felonies, serving major time. He just pardoned all of them. I mean, to me, that was a complete admission of guilt on Trump's behalf, that the only reason he pardoned these people was because they were all his co-conspirators.
Well, you got to give the guy a lot of credit because he don't give a shit about anything, right? It's wrong. What he's doing is wrong, but nevertheless, he just doesn't give a shit. I mean, these pardons that he's handing out to the sheriff that was going away, to these two, to others, they're early term. Usually you don't see pardons coming out in the first 4 months of the presidency. That normally it goes on at the last minute, like minutes before the president leaves, they start stamping or auto pen signing all of these pardons. You think, because I know and I believe this, that Trump is basically sending a message to future loyalists. Do my bidding, take the fall if necessary, and I'm going to wipe your record clean before this trail even heats up.
Of course, that's exactly what he's doing. He's going to make sure that everybody is free and clear. He's got immunity from the Supreme Court, sure, and he's going to try and give it to everybody else through his pardon power. I mean, you wait till the end of his term, you're going to see that auto pen probably break because he'll be issuing so many more pardons at that point in time. I just think, again, it just goes back to the transactional nature of what this guy is all about. You do favors for me and I'll take care of you. You give me money and I'll take care of you. That's what he's doing. This whole thing is so corrupt. I mean, this is the most corrupt administration we've ever had in the history of this country. Nothing has come close to it.
Well, okay, since we're talking about corruption and ineptitude and so on, just talk about, for example, Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of the Department of Defense, the former Fox News host himself, this schmuck. And there's no other way to describe him, this schmuck.
I think it's a good description, actually.
Right. He sort of casually mentions, right, some classified signal intercept in a rant against Pentagon brass, effectively confirming that he had put on, or that there were illegal wiretaps that resulted in the firing of 4 high-ranking military officers. So, Nick, let me ask you this. How reckless and potentially criminal is this disclosure?
One, it's reckless, and two, it's criminal.
You ever try launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you, it's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. I mean, when I started Mea Culpa, I thought to myself, come on, how hard can this be? Well, script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I mean, I felt like I was decoding the damn Matrix. If only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%, you hear me? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's a fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. I mean, you want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates that make you look like a design god. And AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your product descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you actually are. I mean, not naming names or anything, right? I mean, need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. I mean, they are the ride or die business partner that you never knew that you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/Cohen. So if you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify and sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Cohen. That's Shopify, SHOPIFY.com/Cohen. One more time, that's shopify.com/Cohen.
We had the same thing happen in Watergate. There were these national security taps that were placed on a whole bunch of press people, insiders in the Nixon White House. We investigated it. In the end, we did not bring charges on those wiretaps. But certainly here, you can't just place wiretaps on people. You've got to go before a judge. You've got to show probable cause of a crime. You have to get approval for it. There's a whole procedure you do with wiretaps to make them legal. And clearly they were not done here. Now, of course, the problem is who is minding the store at Justice? I mean, it's Pam will do anything Bondi for Donald Trump. She's not going to prosecute him. There's no way. I mean, she'll find some way to justify it and say it's not a prosecutable case. And by the time a new administration comes in, the statute of limitations will have run. So I don't.
Amazing. They have really figured out how to criminalize, government to their advantage. Let me ask you this question.
The mafia's got to be envious of these guys.
And straight. Listen, I am.
Kind of power before.
I am. I can tell you that one. Let me ask you this question. What if hypothetically, and again, it's a major hypothetical, that somebody did do an investigation that shows that Trump actually authorized the wiretaps outside of any FISA or judicial oversight? Could we be looking at that point at Watergate level surveillance abuses? And could Pete Hegseth be subpoenaed as a witness in an obstruction or an unlawful intelligence gathering case, assuming in 2026 that the House and or the Senate turn Democrat?
Well, first of all, you're not going to get a criminal investigation because Trump's going to say it was an official act, that he was dealing with whoever it was in their official capacity, even though it was to commit a crime. I mean, that's what the Supreme Court immunity decision is all about. Under that decision, all of the people that were convicted in the Watergate prosecution, we wouldn't have had anything to do because there wouldn't have been any crimes. And Nixon has the FBI call up the CIA to tell him to get out of this thing. Actually, he had him call the CIA, call the FBI to tell him to stop the investigation. that wouldn't have been a crime. That would have been under the Jeffrey Clark exception. So that's not going to go anywhere. But keep in mind that immunity decision does not apply to impeachment. And certainly all of this stuff that Donald Trump has been doing could be the subject of high crimes and misdemeanors, straight from what he's doing to law firms, what he's doing to the universities and colleges, what he's doing to Krebs, what he's doing to Taylor. All of these things could be high crimes and misdemeanors, even though they can't be prosecuted in court, as well as ordering an illegal wiretap. The problem, of course, with all of that is that the practicality of actually having him removed from office is almost zero unless you got rid of essentially most of the Republicans that are in the Senate. And that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to get a 2/3 vote to remove him. So, the exercise of impeaching him again doesn't really get you anywhere. Yeah, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Not to mention, we'll end up with J.D. Vance moving on up, and then he'll just pardon Trump for everything because he's a complete sycophant. But since we're talking about the courts, again, Trump is just one brazen son of a bitch. He literally has flat out refused to comply with federal judge's orders, including this federal judge's order to return, as an example, the Guatemalan asylum seeker who was unlawfully deported by ICE. Right?
You got a couple of those people, including Garcia, who was sent off to the hellhole in Salvador. I mean, you got a bunch of those people. And Trump has even admitted he could bring the guy back.
Yes, but he has no intention to do it. But in your legal opinion, is this contempt of court? And if so, who could actually enforce it when the DOJ, again, is solely under Trump's thumb?
Couple things here. First of all, what's going on, at least with the Garcia matter in Maryland, is the judge is trying to put together a record, either showing that they are completely not doing anything with respect to enforcing the Supreme Court's order, or that what they're doing is total nonsense. It's going to go back up to the Supreme Court. She's going to hold him in contempt. They'll go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will order him to do it. In terms of contempt and the Department of Justice, the rule of law is that the district court, the federal district court, can actually appoint a private lawyer to prosecute criminal contempt. That's part of our, basic Supreme Court law. And what you first have to do, of course, is ask the Department of Justice to prosecute it. And if they don't, then the judge can, and of course they won't under this circumstance because of Pam Bondi, then what the court can do is get a private lawyer and have that private lawyer prosecute the contempt case. Then, of course, the problem comes up. The guy gets convicted. He gets to serve time. Where does he serve the time? It certainly can't be in the Federal Bureau of Prisons because Trump controls that. So they'd have to make some arrangement with a state organization to have them incarcerated. And on top of it, Trump could then just pardon them. So even though you've got a system in place to do this, there's lots of ways that Trump can put his hand into it and stop what's going on.
Oh, and he would. Meanwhile, Trump literally just signed an executive order that stripped Harvard of, I think it was like over $4 billion of research funding, citing as the basis for this executive order, which is, I think, the first time ever something like this has been done. Yes. He cited anti-American curricula, suspending all foreign student visas tied with the enrollment at the school. And of course, I'm talking about Harvard.
Right.
Could this be challenged immediately?
It is being challenged. Absolutely. It is being challenged. And this is
under the First and the 14th Amendment?
Oh, no question about it. I mean, right now, there's two parts to that Harvard case. The one is the business about the students, the foreign students not being permitted to be at Harvard. Already, there's been a temporary restraining order that's been issued by the judge. She did it without the other side even being present because she knew, and they knew, that if this allowed to go for one day more, they'd be losing all their foreign students. And there's a hearing this Thursday in federal court in Boston for a preliminary injunction. And I guarantee you they're going to get that preliminary injunction. And then they're going to file for summary judgment, just like the lawyers did in these cases relating to the law firms. The second part of this case has to do with what you mentioned before, which is all of these various fundings and grants that go to Harvard for research, et cetera. There is a schedule now in place where the government, not the government, but Harvard is going to be filing its motion for summary judgment on June 4th. And there's a whole schedule set up for that. And I would suspect in the next couple months, you're going to see the judge ruling in favor of Harvard and granting summary judgment and directing that all of these monies be sent back to Harvard. I mean, it is so off the charts, so outrageous. The best evidence Harvard has against Trump is this letter that was sent on April 11th, basically showing that the Trump administration wants to take over the whole university. They want to tell Harvard who to hire, who to accept as students, how to operate their university, what courses they can teach and can't teach, and then to put a monitor in charge of the whole thing to make sure that it's done the way that Trump wants it done. So there's no way this is ever going to get past the summary judgment, and there's no way any court's going to reverse this. I mean, he's going to be slammed just like he's been slammed, as he has been, with the 3 law firms that have already gotten summary judgment and dismissed his executive order. The same thing's going to happen here.
And all of this being done in the name of anti-Semitism. Look, Nick, the hour goes by, like I said at the beginning. It goes by, unfortunately, way too fast because I got a million more questions, for you. But here's my final question for you. If you were building the prosecutorial roadmap to hold this administration accountable in, let's just say, 2029, right? If God willing, a new administration, if there's even going to be an election, right, in 2028, right? So January of 2029, if you were building this prosecutory roadmap after, of course, Trump gets pushed out, what case would you start with? And what's the smoking gun that you're watching for right now?
Well, I think there's a lot of them, but they're buried in emails. They're buried in directives, but some of the stuff is right out in the open. I mean, these executive orders are just so blatantly illegal, and there were other people that were involved in them. So the question, of course, is the Supreme Court going to permit other people to be prosecuted based on what was done? Because their argument's going to be, well, if the president's immunized and we're carrying out the president's duties, the same reason you gave him immunity is why we should get immunity. So there's a lot of problems with that. And there's also problems with really just gathering evidence right now. No one's out there. There are no independent, inspector generals that are out there that can gather evidence at this point. Wow. Most of it's going to get destroyed by the time he leaves office. There's going to be bonfires all over Washington, D.C. So it's going to be very difficult to actually make cases on this stuff because, again, there's no independent Department of Justice. This is the first time in a long time, maybe ever, that we've had a Justice Department that is controlled by the president to the extent that he's essentially saying I'm committing crimes and there's nothing you're going to do and you're going to let me do it. And the Supreme Court's let me do it anyway. So that is the real problem here. You just have to see what the damage is and what's left on the playing field when Trump leaves office. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't easy when Bill Barr was doing it as well. Nick Akerman, thank you, my brother. Great to see you. Definitely have to have you back because me personally, I'm curious to see how these smoking guns continue, to sort of escalate day by day, by day by day. And it's amazing.
By hour.
Right? The chaos, the distraction, the grifting, the whole 9 yards, the dissemination of war plans. I mean, the firing of people based upon, refusals to take lie detector tests. I mean, this whole administration is just nuts. But
No,
Nick
totally.
Akerman, totally. I thank you for joining me. And again, I will see you very soon, my friend.
Great to be here. Thank you.